Hey guys, welcome back to Gear Forwards. My name's Paul, and today we're taking a look at this weird little flat guy. This is the Klarus E5. So let's go ahead and get a quick size comparison before we take a look at the design a little closer. Up top we have a 91mm Swiss Army knife, and down below a 58mm classic. And then let's swap that out for something a little bit more flashlight centric. Here is a AAA battery. Here's a You can see just how thin this guy is. This guy is actually roughly the same, a little thinner than a AAA, which is actually insane. And now to take a look at the design itself, this is a very flat style flashlight. We have a pocket clip on the back, and we have two sets of lights. We have this front facing light here, and then we have this side LED here. Now, in addition to the easy to carry form factor, we do have a magnet on the bottom, which, as you can see, easily supports this guy. This is only 36 grams. I don't know off the top of my head what that is in ounces for you guys that use that metric. However, it's staggering just how light, thin, and just carryable this thing is. Now, in terms of control, we have a single button on the side here, and then completely opposite that, we have a little flap for the USB-C port for recharging. It's a little fiddly to get out, but there you have it. It is recessed. You can get a pretty wide selection of cables in there, but obviously it's not going to be the most compatible with everything. That's just the downside to having a recessed port with a flap. Yeah, you can see that the bezel for the side light kind of sticks out a little bit. And if you have this in your pocket, this is roughly how much is going to stick out. Now let's go ahead and jump into the UI here. Now the UI is all operate on this single button, and it's kind of unique in some ways, I'll say. So I think I have this set to come on this side first. So when I click, we're just going to go straight into high. Now, as you can see, we do have a little bit of visual PWM there. And one more click is going to step down into low mode, and another click is off. Now, whilst the flashlight is on or off, you can press and hold to switch from whichever one you're in to the other one. Now, whilst the front light does have a rather cold temperature, this side light is actually much more of a neutral daylighty kind of temperature, which is actually pretty nice. And again, as we press, this time instead of starting at the top, we start at the bottom and ramp upwards. And then we have this kind of weird police red and blue siren disco mode. I don't know why some Chinese brands like to include that. I don't know why that would ever really be useful, but it's there. In terms of beams, and there will be a short associated with this video for you to go and check out the beam patterns of this outside at night. But in terms of beam pattern, we have just flood. This is very floody, no real hot spot unless you get very close. And then when you go kick it down a bit, and even though these lights are quite bright, I will say that the low mode is pretty low considering how floody this is. It's a very useful work light style, I would say. Lighting up an area whilst you're taking use of the magnet is probably the best case here. Although it does tail stand, so you can kind of awkwardly, it will fall down, but you can kind of awkwardly prop it up that way as well. So overall, beam pattern wise, it's useful, but I would not really consider this to be a primary light. I would recommend carrying this with something else. Now let's take a look at the brightnesses and run times of the E5. So I'll hold this up on screen so you can go ahead and pause if you'd like to get a closer look. And just a quick mention, this is IPX4 rated, so it can handle some degree of exposure, but it's not, don't go submerging this if you can avoid it. Now, to start off with that front light, the high mode, which it first comes on to, is 85 lumens and lasts for 4.5 hours, which is, to be fair, a very long time. This only has a 450 milliamp hour battery, I believe. And then the low mode kicks it down to 23 lumens for 12 hours, although I don't personally think that with the entire lack of reflector, that is a particularly useful mode. Just bear that in mind. The main side light starts off in 30 lumens for 10 hours, steps up to 70 lumens for 6.5, with a high mode of 287 lumens for 3 hours and a turbo 470 for 0.7 of an hour. So we have a good range of brightnesses there for the side light. I would kind of prefer to maybe see a medium for the front light to make it a little bit more useful. However, it is overall a decent selection. Now let's jump on into the good of this guy. Now I have to say that the overwhelming positive for this light is just how thin and how light it is. You would easily be able to put this in your pocket, and unless the pit that sticks out gets caught on something, just forget that it exists. The clip is nice and wide with a decent amount of ramp, which makes it nice and easy for getting over pockets and onto bag straps and whatnot. And with the inclusion of the magnet, it's just really carryable, really useful. And in the hand, because you have this nice smooth anodized aluminum, it is quite nice to use. Although I will say that if you want to hold it properly, you're obviously going to run the risk of just smudging the crap out of that front cob lens there. And in terms of price, this is also very cheap. Now on Amazon.co.uk, this is running about, I think it was 17 or 18 pounds. However, Klarus is a Chinese brand, and you can get them directly from Klarus on various Chinese vendor sites for much cheaper. Now, I got this specifically from Temu for, I think it was £9.68 or something like that. Less than £10 with free shipping. It was insane. Obviously, if you go with Temu over Amazon, you're going to pay a lot less, but you're going to take a lot longer for shipping, and then it's a different set of customer services. It's all personal preference, really. I chose, because I didn't need it straight away, longer shipping, cheaper light. But that price point is a very attractive option, especially since this is actually pretty well built. Now, this is not the highest build quality. The anodization and aluminium doesn't really stand up to, say, some of the sofa lights I've been reviewing lately. However, it is much better quality than you would expect for the price point, which is the main point in delivering value. It does come with USB-C charging, which is very nice to see, especially on a cheaper light, which often reverts to micro USB, probably because they are cheaper to source as it's at the end of its lifespan. And overall, I do really like that it has the nice floody side light. I would say that this light is primarily the side light. Yes, it has that front one. I wouldn't personally recommend it for a great deal. If you want to have a light that you're using in a traditional manner, then just carry something separately. Even something little like this little Lumentop EDC01 would serve you better in that forward-facing application than the E5. Now on to the not so good, what could really be improved about this light. Now, the front light lacking a reflector whatsoever means that it is severely limited in how useful it is, and I would just rather see even just a very shallow reflector, just to give this a little bit more push. Now, in terms of the the interface, because you have this small rubber button directly opposite this small rubber cap, if you're not looking or you're not super familiar with the orientation of the light, you're indexing both the flap and the button at the same time, just based on feel, and it can be very easy to try and push the flap instead of the button. I would rather these were a little bit offset. Obviously, you have the raised icons, but first touch, or if you're wearing gloves, that's not really going to be a great thing to distinguish between. So I would just rather that these were a little bit different, or maybe the button placement was a little different to begin with. I wouldn't mind really the button just changing entirely. And this flap, as you know probably from other videos, I'm not a huge fan of charging flaps, but man is it. I currently have a little bit of nails because I need to cut them, but it is fiddly. That's partially because there's not much there's not much room outside of the tab for you to flex it, so you have to kind of bend it in on itself. And considering this is only IPX4, I'm kind of weighing up, it might have just been better to just have a naked port to begin with, but at the same time, throwing a cap on it is a cheap way of protecting the port. It is what it is. The clip itself, I would really have rather have seen a deep carry style, because this is a lot to stick out of your pocket. This is a lot to very easily catch on something. So I would rather have seen either a design that allowed the clip to fold over, or just have, a less large screw pattern, for lack of a better term, or maybe move the screws further up if possible. That's just something that I think hinders the otherwise fantastic carryability of the light. Final thing is the UI. I'm not a big fan of it. Now, switching between the modes, just holding, is fine. It does mean that you have to remember what it was last on. You can't just say double press for the side light, which you can on other lights, which I would prefer. And I really don't like that this comes on in the high mode. I genuinely prefer to go low to high, which this one does on the side light. And I genuinely don't like having the UI be asymmetrical on the same light. This goes high to low, this goes low to high. That doesn't make any sense. And this forces you to go through disco mode if you're going through all of them. That should really be locked behind a certain button press. The UI is certainly usable. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but it could just certainly be better. And that's the main takeaway about this light, is that it's not bad, it's fantastic value, and I could see a lot of use for this light in a lot of different EDCs, and this is going to make it into some of my bags or kits, but it's going to always be accompanied by a real, proper, dedicated flashlight, something that can actually throw lumens a little bit better. But that doesn't mean that this isn't useful as an impromptu work light and a supportive second option. But that's just what I think. What do you think of the Klarus E5? Have you tried other Klaruses that you might want to recommend for me to check out? Let me know in the comment section down below. And in the meantime, while you're down there, I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit like and subscribe. That does greatly help the channel out. If you would like to support the channel a little bit more directly, then please consider supporting on Patreon or YouTube membership, which gives you benefits such as early access to videos, more access to me, or if you would just like to support on a one-off basis, then please consider donating via the coffee service. All links down in the description below. Well, that's just me. I've been Paul, and I will see you next time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.